What's up? My name is Luke and let's set the scene. You've got a Onewheel GT and you want some more power, but you don't want to buy a GTS. Well, Future Motion have come out with a new option for you, and that is to put a GTS motor on your GT. And is it worth the $850 upgrade? Let's find out in today's video. What this means is, by upgrading to a GTS motor on your GT, you're going to achieve more power for those hill climbs, curb nudges, and any kind of riding that requires instant low-end torque from your board. So how do you upgrade the board? Well, it's super easy. All you do is purchase the GTS motor from Future Motion, and then you can install it on your GT easily because it uses the same motor connection as the GTS. So a GTS motor can go in a GT, no problems, it's the same size. And while you're there, you can also put a different tyre on the board because now you have a motor needing a tyre. And a lot of people choose the performance tyre from Future Motion. But the real question is this worth $850 in upgrades? Now, when you think about a GT costing $2,200, you're now just over $3,000 into that GT, and a GTS is $3,200. It will never be able to compete with the GTS simply because of the battery. The GT has 75 volts and a GTS has 113. So that motor can pull more volts from the battery and give more performance. But still, by having a different motor that has different magnets and different bearings, this will help your GT unlock new performance. So let's find out how it compares in real world testing. So let's take a look at the first video. It's a 20-degree climb in the trails for the GT, GT with an S motor, and a GTS to compare. Now, you have to remember, the conditions were not ideal, they were damp. You can see from this video, it's very loose terrain that they're trying to climb. But it's a great example that really pushes the low-end power of the boards when they're climbing at a reasonable speed. Obviously, if you go really fast, you can climb hills easier, but this is all at the same speed to make it fair. And here we go. This is the Onewheel GT with a standard motor climbing the hill. This is a completely stock powertrain board, and it's doing pretty well at the start, but around this point I really start to feel the board struggling, getting dips in the nose is very close, and that's the end. Unfortunately, the board runs out of power and that's all it can do. And now we have the GT with the S series motor. I can already feel the torque is a huge improvement when I'm going along, even on the not too steep section. But now as it starts to get steeper, you really start to feel the difference. I am now just about to pass my GT, so you can see it's doing better. It is struggling, but with that better low end torque, it is still climbing. We're probably moving a couple of miles an hour at the moment, but it's such an upgrade already. But unfortunately at that point, the tyres span out and I just started to run out of that torque, and that was all it could do. And now for the Onewheel GTS series. Obviously we have 113 volts compared to 75, so a huge upgrade already. But it's going along. I'd say at this point it felt very similar. Now this board did have gradient tracking turned on. It was my first time using it, so it did feel a little bit different. But as you can see, we're now passing the standard GT. It was struggling at this point, but we're still moving. It's still got the torque. We're now passing the GT with the S motor. So as you can see, it's done the best, but we'd expect that. We're almost at the top, but again, loose terrain, and we just ran out of that torque and the tyres span up. But you can see that is a huge improvement. This is a simple test. It's a very slow climb in a little bowl in the trails. All boards do it, no problems. So now we're about to climb another steep hill on the trails, and again, it's soft and loose and slightly damp, but let's see how they compare. Looking at the boards climbing the hill, you can see it goes GTS, GT with S series, and GT in last place, which is again what we'd expect. And you can actually see the GT was having a few nosedives on the climb and really surging and struggling, whereas the GT with the S motor and the GTS did feel very similar. This was a really steep hill climb, and we tried on the GT and the GT with the S series motor, and again the GT with the S series did slightly better, but it still only got around halfway up this hill. But as you can see on screen right now, I managed to climb the entire hill on the GTS. It did take a couple of goes, but that board had so much more power, it just ate up the hill. Now unfortunately, again, due to the soft terrain and the damp conditions, the tyre span just at the last second, and I didn't make it to the absolute top, but I was within 30 centimeters compared to the other boards only getting around halfway. You can see 113 volts does make a big difference. And now it's time for a drag race up a hill on tarmac this time. Now let's see how they compare in a drag race. So straight off the line, you can see how the GT and the GT with the S series are pretty close, and the GT has already nosedived trying to keep up. Just goes to show the power difference. But the GT with the S series motor pulled away for a split second there. It was actually in the lead, but now the hill was getting steeper. The GTS did start to take it. But as you can see, there's not a massive difference because we couldn't get up to 25 on the GTS just because of the steepness of this hill. Again, you can't see that on camera. But the difference between the GT and a GT with an S series motor is huge. And there we are. That pretty much sums it up. I mean, you can see the upgrade is definitely there. We can see across all the different tests that the GT with an S series motor made a huge difference over a stock GT and got it that little bit closer, and in some cases a lot closer to GTS performance. But it's never going to be the same as a GTS simply because of the battery pack. But now we need to think, is this worth the upgrade? With a GT with an S series motor, you're around 3,000, and with a GTS, you're 3,200. So not a huge difference. Now obviously you could have bought a GT used and then put an S series motor on it, but if we're talking about new prices here, they are very similar, and the GTS is still going to be better as a performance board. And as you would have seen in my previous video reviewing the GTS, the GT has a much better battery. So when you put a GTS motor on a GT, you pretty much have a great all-round solution, because now you have the range of a GT, but you have more low-end torque to get closer performance to a GTS series. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and it will allow you to make your decision if you believe the GTS series motor is enough of an upgrade to warrant the price. Now you can see it does make a huge difference, and it does take your GT to the next level. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have, please do like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.